Okay, year 10, hello and welcome to your third lesson and the third video. This one's on Climbing My Grandfather by Waterhouse, and we're continuing, of course, with the love and relationships poems. So if in front of you, as always, can you please make sure you've got your knowledge organiser out, please? Your copy of your anthology, if you've got that at home, and please turn to the page where we've annotated Climbing My Grandfather, and then of course you will need one of the sheets from Miss Christie. You can either type in it, so have it up on your screen, or you can have a copy printed out for you to handwrite in, but you will need one of those sheets that you've been sent in your home learning work. Okay. So, starting as we always do with the summary of the poem then. So, on a literal level, the poem involves the speaker recalling being a young boy, and he's recalling sitting on his grandfather's knee. And as he sits on his grandfather's knee and climbs all over him, the young boy remembers discovering things about his grandfather and his grandfather's appearance. Now, the poem is told from the perspective of the boy as a young child, and the grandfather seems huge and mountainous to the young boy. But it's important that we look at this poem not only in terms of its literal meaning and literally what is happening, but also the metaphorical interpretation of the poem in this instance is very important. And throughout the poem, we see the poet Andrew Waterhouse use the extended metaphor of the grandfather as a mountain. And as the young boy uses the semantic field of climbing, as he tracks up the grandfather, we see basically this poem is emphasising the significance of discovery in their relationship. It is emphasising this idea that we must discover the people who we love, and that to truly know someone, we must discover them. And that idea that, like climbing a mountain, we must almost metaphorically climb to know the people we love and care for. So, as always, I'm just going to ask you to pause the video to complete the first box there, which is the summary of the poem. Okay, so now today we're actually going to look at the wider messages and ideas in the poem before we move on to look at the language and the structure. So we're going to be looking at that wider messages and ideas box first. And why are we doing this in a slightly different order today? Well, because to really understand such a metaphorical poem, we must understand the ideas and the reasons for the metaphor in the poem before we look at the individual and zoom in on the individual aspects of language and structure. So then, what is Waterhouse's wider message about family relationships, and perhaps in fact any relationships? Well, I think we must start with this metaphor, as I've said. And like climbing a mountain, Waterhouse is saying to us that getting to know people is challenging and difficult. It can be both physically and emotionally challenging to truly get to know someone. But again, like climbing a mountain, Waterhouse is saying to us that if we truly get to know the people we love, that in itself holds great rewards for our relationships. And that our relationships will be better because we truly know those people. And of course, as we've done in Knowledge Recall Year 10, and as we've continually recalled as we've studied this poem, Waterhouse ultimately suggests that for true bonds to form, we must truly know people. And he's therefore suggesting that relationships, I mean, in this instance, I think of any kind, I think his message is more universal than just a grandparent-grandchild relationship. I think he's saying for any relationship to be truly loving and truly meaningful, it must be rooted in openness and honesty. And I've put this little bit in red at the bottom there because I think that's a nice way of summing up what Waterhouse is saying, and ultimately why he's used such a strong extended metaphor throughout his poem. What he really is saying is we must discover the people that we love, and I think that's really important. So if you would like to just pause the video, please, and if you would like to complete that wider ideas and messages box, that's actually at the bottom of the sheet that you will have received, okay? So then, on to unmissable quotations. And of course we know that the language, the symbolism in poetry is going to form the main body of our essays and analysis. And we're going to use it to back up and support all of the other points which we make in our poetry essays. So we're going to start today with the first line in the poem. I decided to do it free without a rope or net. Now, this opening line introduces the semantic field of mountaineering and discovery straight away. Rope and net and the idea of free climbing, all straight away, this idea, this semantic field of discovery, climbing and mountaineering. And it makes clear from the outset that getting to know his grandfather is a bit like climbing a mountain. And getting to know anybody is in fact a little bit like climbing a mountain. It is challenging but rewarding. And I've highlighted that in red for you. It is challenging but rewarding. Now, also, this opening line highlights that getting to know someone is a little bit risky. Perhaps it's even dangerous to our emotions. If we truly get to know somebody, we put ourselves in a more vulnerable situation of getting hurt. But actually, Waterhouse is portraying the idea that this risk, this bravery, will be rewarded when, of course, we metaphorically reach the summit. Now, of course, metaphorically, we're not reaching the summit of a mountain. We're metaphorically reaching the summit of a fulfilling and true bond with somebody. We can truly know the people we love. So that opening line, it introduces that metaphor, but perhaps more importantly, introduces that idea that yes, we have to take these risks to have true and fulfilling and meaningful relationships. Now, okay, we've looked at this quote an awful lot year 10 in our knowledge recall, and the reason we've done that is because it is so important. When he describes it as being like warm ice, I think we should start with this idea that this is a paradoxical simile. Okay, you can't really have warm ice. So then why has this been used? Well, I think it seems to symbolise that things and people are not always as they seem. Waterhouse could be suggesting that really these people are in our lives. We do not know many of the complexities of them. We do not know everything about them, and they may not be exactly as we assume them to be. And of course, the paradoxical nature also reflects that people's quirks and experiences, so the things that make somebody different or the experiences somebody has had can make them difficult for us to understand. But that doesn't mean we should shy away from getting to know those things about people. It is that actually, when we do get to know those things about people, it makes our relationships so much more meaningful. And I think Waterhouse is perhaps suggesting that that's especially true in grandparent-grandchild relationships, where there's that quite considerable and significant age difference there. Now, interestingly, I also really think the idea of warm and warmth is so significant in this quote, because Waterhouse could be suggesting that even in amongst the harsh reality of the grandfather's death, which is of course implied at the end of the poem, this cold and sad time is warmed by the memories and nostalgia that he has from his grandfather. But of course, Waterhouse is reminding us that in death, or in the instance of a death of a loved one, we will only have that warmth in amongst the cold heartbreak of the time if we truly know somebody. So again, coming back to that message, that true bonds can only be formed when we truly know somebody. Now, refreshed. Just a one-word quotation, so super easy for us to remember and learn, but also in this instance super significant here. It basically simply shows us that this relationship nourishes the speaker. The speaker is nourished, hydrated, almost fed with love perhaps by truly knowing his grandfather. And therefore we are again reminded that when our relationships are open, when they are honest, okay, they can truly support and comfort us in life, and they can refresh us. And I think that's a nice comforting and warm reminder. Now, the last quote I've picked out actually comes quite early in the poem, but it's the glassy ridge of a scar. Now, a scar connotes a painful and difficult memory. Now, this could reflect how the grandfather's life is or was full of difficulty, which he has chosen to shield and protect his young grandson from. So the grandson doesn't really know the truth about all these difficulties, but is discovering him through this mountainous climb. But I think, far more significantly actually, is this idea here, this bottom bullet point, that a scar shows memories and past experiences stay with us and shape us. When we have a scar, that scar stays with us for life. And I think this is a really, really powerful image that Waterhouse very carefully uses in his poem. Because I think he is saying to us that when we truly know the people we love, even when they die, they can stay in our memories and continue to shape and influence our life. So when the grandfather's pulse slows at the end of the poem, and when it's implied and suggested, I think, that the grandfather is perhaps dying, it's not that it doesn't matter to the speaker, but it's that the speaker has these almost memories that will stay with him for life because his relationship was truly rooted in love, and that those memories can continue to shape and influence. Okay, so if you would like to pause the video just there, please, and if you would like to complete our unmissable quotes box, please remember to put quotes and analysis in that box, because we want these to be the most useful revision tool they can as we move towards year 11. And now we're going to move on to structure and form. So there's two things I want to talk about with structure and form in this poem. But the most significant, I think, is that the poem is a single stanza. It is a one stanza poem, and it is quite a long stanza, and it is a solid block of text. And I think the poem is in one stanza because, of course, that mirrors the shape of a mountain. And if you look at the poem on your anthology, you'll see that the poem mirrors that shape of a mountain. And of course, that seems to continue the extended metaphor of the poem, that the grandfather is a mountain. And of course, if we climb the mountain, that is challenging but rewarding. The same as if we truly know people, that is challenging but rewarding. But I think there are other things we can say about this mountainous shape, this single stanza, this solid block of text. Because on one level, I think it shows the grandson's admiration for his grandfather. It shows how unbelievably and unimaginably strong and courageous he sees his grandfather as. And it conveys this idea of just pure respect. And it could also convey the idea that the grandfather was a strong and reliable presence in the grandson's life. And I think that he was always there. He was a reliable, strong presence. And I think that's really nice interpretation too. Now, the only other point I wanted to make on the structure of this poem is specifically on the use of free verse. Now, the poem is written in free verse. We know that free verse means a poem has no rhyme. Now, I think this lack of rhyme conveys and reflects the sense of adventure and freedom that the grandson is having as he's climbing up his grandfather. But it also shows that people's lives are perhaps not harmonious or in perfect rhythm. Just as the poem has no rhyme, our lives do not always follow this natural and perfect rhythm. But actually that these complexities of lives, the complexity of our lives and the risk of getting to know those complexities of other people's lives is actually a risk worth taking. So if you would again like to pause the video, please, and if you complete that structure and form box, and then of course we only have one more box left to do. So then, we've got the final box today, okay, and the final box for this poem. And it's what we would compare this poem to. Now, I think Crime in My Grandfather can conceivably be compared to any parent-child relationship or family relationship poem from the cluster. Of course, this isn't a parent-child relationship, it's a grandparent-grandchild relationship. But I think it can conceivably be compared with any parent-child poem from the cluster. However, I think the two it best compares with are Before You Were Mine and Eden Rock, and I'm going to do videos on those poems today as well. Now, why does it compare so well with Duffy's Before You Were Mine? Well, I think it compares well there because both poems explore the idea of a child or a grandchild exploring the importance of truly knowing their parents and grandparents. And I think they explore the idea of how we form true bonds and how much do we truly know about the people that we love. Then secondly, and perhaps the poem I think I may choose to compare this poem to, is Eden Rock. Now, Causley's Eden Rock is a poem rooted in nostalgia and admiration for his parents, but I actually think that Waterhouse's poem, Climbing My Grandfather, is ultimately rooted in those same themes and ideas of nostalgia and admiration, in this instance for his grandfather. And both poems focus on the importance of appreciating our loved ones and respecting them, and also the fact that if we truly know people, then the memories can nourish us and care for us when our loved ones sadly and ultimately depart us. So if you fill in that last box, year 10, that would be absolutely fantastic. Hopefully you've got at least 3 of these revision sheets done. Hopefully these lessons are helping you and we are getting well on our way, and I'll see you in our next video and our next lesson. Thank you very much, year 10.